Ladies and gentlemen, what you gonna do, brother? Oh yeah! Woo! What? If you smell what the rock.
You got the wrong guy. I'm the dude, man.
Welcome to another edition of Around the Turnbuckle. I'm the Big Alboski. He is Professor Keith. We are fresh off of 3WA Slams Giving. Keith, did you enjoy yourself last night?
I did. Very good show again. I love how 3WA is getting younger and the younger guys are really starting to put it together, and it's great to watch. Really, all of these guys get better and better every time I see them, and how hungry everybody is. Everything getting locked into place. It's just good, fun pro wrestling.
Yeah, and in case you are tuning in and looking for Cortez Castro, he will be with us momentarily. Might be having some difficulties on his end, but Keith and I never run out of things to talk about, and we will talk about those things while we're waiting for Cortez Castro. He did wrestle last night, and he did have an Impact title matchup, which he tried to win back. He's a former High Impact Championship at 3WA. And the current champion, Greg the Mechanic Manuel, took him to the limit, but he got the job done.
Greg's another guy that is just really, really coming into his own every time he shows up. We talked to him after the match. He just keeps a crazy schedule in terms of he has a full-time job where he works like 60, 70 hours a week. Then he comes to the 3WA shows. He's on ring crew. He does setup. He does tear down. And then he wrestles in between. Just God bless the man. I don't know when he sleeps. I couldn't do it. Hats off.
I just got a message from Cortez Castro, said he's just leaving the gym.
Okay.
The guy never stops. I tell you one thing.
No. If you guys have watched Cortez at any point in his career,
AKA Ricky Reyes, because you might have seen him under that.
I was just about to say, some of you might not be familiar with that name, but I'm sure you're familiar with the name Ricky Reyes if you're any kind of a wrestling fan within the last 20 or so years. Fantastic run with Ring of Honor. Cup of coffee in the WWE, a major part of Lucha Underground,
Sure.
Cup of coffee with Combat Zone Wrestling. One of those guys that, I know the term is used in a derogatory way, so before I say it, let me please point out that I mean it as respectfully as possible. A guy that is a king of the indies in the best possible sense.
Sure, and absolutely, and he never stops working. He loves the business. I know he loves the business. If you follow him on Facebook, you can follow him on Facebook at Ricky Reyes. And every post that he posts is just reassures how much he loves the business. Been doing it now for about 20 years plus. Like Keith said, well-traveled. And nowadays he just kind of goes wherever he's booked and he shows up, and he seems to be booked every weekend. And scrolling across the bottom of your screen, if you're in the Peaburg, if you're in the New Jersey or Pennsylvania area and you want to catch him live, he will be at the ECPW live event on Friday, December the 3rd. That is this Friday. No, that's next Friday. This Friday. Right?
No, it is this Friday, yeah.
This Friday at Rochelle Park, New Jersey. Tickets are $15. 20 at the door, and you can go to ecpw1.com for details. He will be in the main event of that. And he will be taking on the ECPW champion for the title that night. His name has escaped me. His name is Kenny Bangle, the current ECPW champion. So yeah, he's well traveled all around, and he will be with us once he gets home from the gym. Meanwhile, I have an announcement to make. There is a special edition of Around the Turnbuckle tomorrow, where we welcome ECW original and York County, Pennsylvania native and hero, Wolfman, the one and only Wolfman, the legendary Wolfman, well known in Pennsylvania and well known outside of Pennsylvania, but the Wolfman will be here live tomorrow night at a special time, 7 o'clock. The man is a busy man, does podcasts, he does all this stuff, and meanwhile, he loves staying in the business, even as at his age, and he's getting up there, and he knows it. But staying in the business, helping these young guys grow, is his main goal now, and he does that in the form of 3WA. He does that in the form of SWO. So he's highly involved as far as Pennsylvania local wrestling goes. So we're excited, very excited, to talk one-on-one with the Wolfman tomorrow.
He's one of those true characters of professional wrestling that, I really fear that is something of a dying breed, that, you just don't see those eccentric special performers anymore. You certainly don't at the homogenized, pasteurized, and sanitized for your entertainment and protection in corporate wrestling, where everybody has to apparently check a few boxes, and they all have to wrestle the same. And unfortunately, that's part of why corporate wrestling is probably.
He did forewarn me that he is not very savvy on the computer. So he may be a phone call interview. Either way, we'll be glad to have that conversation with him live tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, right here on this channel, right here on YouTube, right here on our Facebook channel, on Twitter. We're live right now on 2 different Facebook channels and 2 different YouTube channels, and we are live on Twitter as well. So in case you haven't yet, I would love it if you'd go and hit that subscribe button and do us a favor. It takes you 2 seconds to do that. Also, like our videos. Check out some of our old interviews. We had president of and owner of 3WA last week, Dino Santa, on. Check out that interview. Many people have thrown me comments about that one. We have talked to everybody from Flash Carter, who is fresh in the business and 19, 20 years old, to Hall of Famer Stevie Ray from Harlem Heat.
Ray Hoffman.
So honestly, we're glad to talk to each and every person and share their experiences. And I know that when Cortez Castro, aka Ricky Reyes, comes on here, he has a lot to say. He loves this business as much as Keith and I do, but even more so because the man has lived it for 20 years, has wrestled everybody and anybody in the independent scene and Ring of Honor and Lucha Underground. So I'm sure he's got a bunch of stories to tell us once he gets on here. But I did inform him, in fact, that we are live. So let's talk, Keith, while we're waiting for him. Let's talk about the promo that kind of shocked the wrestling world this week. And when I say shocked, there hasn't been a whole heck of a lot to talk about in the mainstream wrestling world as far as WWE/AEW/Impact goes right now, except on Wednesday night on Dynamite, there was a exchange between CM Punk and MJF, which was one of, if you guys haven't seen it, check it out on YouTube or whatever. It's one of the greatest promo / segments I've seen in a long time. The chemistry between those guys. First off, 2 of the best on the mic ever. And then second, and that's saying something for MJF as young as his career is. Mm-hmm. And 2, just the exchange that they had, the crowd was completely in it. I'm on the edge of my seat going, he did not just say that. You got to see it if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I do think at some points it did point out how young MJF is, where I think MJF sometimes was rushing to fill the space instead of maybe taking a pause where he needed to. I like the dynamic here. I mean, I think we all knew that there was going to come a day where it was going to be MJF and it was going to be CM Punk in that ring, and we were going to get to that feud. I love that it kind of reverses the dynamic of where Punk came in, where Punk first made his name kind of being in the MJF spot, where he was this young upstart, Feuding with Raven. He hated Raven. He hated everything Raven was. He hated that Raven had pissed his career away, with his demons and everything else. And Raven is kind of the veteran that has been through the shit, is trying to kind of find his way again and prove that he still has something. And here's this young, cocky bastard coming after him. And can he prove himself against the young, cocky bastard? I looked at that, and I've seen all of the Raven CM Punk stuff. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, wow, this is Punk coming full circle. This is kind of everything. And I love that he referenced that, and that's what Punk brought to it, of like, yeah, you're where I was. You're right. I can tell that you're a fan of me because you're doing exactly the kind of stuff that I would have done at your age. But let me speak a little wisdom on you and let you know that this old man, isn't done yet and will absolutely kick your ass because you may be trying to be me, but you're not measuring up. I thought it was great. I didn't mind the WWF references, which sometimes I get a little ticked off at, because in this case, they made sense. It's part of the story.
The discount is like
right. I mean, that part I didn't pop for as hard as a lot of other people did.
Oh,
the CM Punk but the Triple H and the John Cena references, it makes sense because those are an integral part of Punk's story. That is an integral part of why Punk has been gone and what Punk is sort of coming back to get over, to climb over in the hill, to not have his career end and be remembered as, here's the guy that got screwed around in the WWF, that couldn't be as big as John Cena in their eyes, that basically told Triple H, yeah, I don't need to wrestle you, you need to wrestle me, so I'm not playing that shit.
Right.
I was perfectly fine with it there, because it's one thing when you have a Cody Rhodes or somebody like that has no tangible connection to that stuff that the fans understand, other than to just portray those people as boogeymen. And portraying Triple H as a boogeyman to that audience, to me, I don't think has the cachet that it used to, because unless you are somebody he directly fucked over, that audience is going to understand he did that too. I think Triple H has kind of become a victim now, as crazy as that is to think of. When we came up on the internet, Triple H was the devil, and he was holding everybody back. And now, whether you want to say, well, it's karma that he got NXT taken away from him and he's in the position he's in, I do think Triple H is seen as a bit of a victim now, as somebody that was trying to create that AEW or that indie-like product in WWE
within it,
and now it's been taken away from him, and it's being bastardized and just completely not what he would have done with it. So I think taking shots at someone like Triple H, unless you're doing it with a CM Punk who does have a grievance with Triple H that this audience would understand and would see Triple H as the villain in,
right,
you're not going to be able to take shots at Triple H anymore and get any traction with it. And I would argue taking shots at WWE, if you are not someone who was wronged by the company and that the main general audience understands or sees as being wronged by the company, there's no mileage in it for you. So I'm fine with it here, and I'm glad that generally it seems like AEW's gotten that out of their system and doesn't seem to use that as much anymore. I liked everything I saw on Dynamite this week, honestly. Sure. And it's kind of what I was saying to people, before we had the show, and just in general, I said AEW is probably going to suck at first. And the only people that are going to like it are going to be the people that know who these people are and are already, in the cult and know the secret handshake and all of that stuff. Because a lot of this talent is going to be people that you don't know, that have never been on national television before. Right. They're going to do all the stuff that they normally do. It's going to look bad because a lot of fans our age are going to be more used to the polished, professional type guys.
Right.
These guys are going to have to learn on the job. And thankfully, AEW had upgrades available. They were able to pick up a CM Punk. They're able to pick up Daniel Bryan, who is killing it. Bryan Danielson is killing it right now. I love this new character. I love this mean streak and this evil direction that he's got going on.
Right.
They've got Jay Lethal now, and Jay Lethal is amazing. I love Jay Lethal. Great pickup to get Jay Lethal.
Yeah, I had always called Jay Lethal the most underappreciated professional wrestler of all time.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, it's great that he was in Ring of Honor and he was used very well and he was
And
happy.
Impact.
But Jay deserves big money.
Yeah.
You know, Jay Lethal deserves to make big buckets of money for whatever time he's got left in the wrestling business. Guy has certainly.
Chris Vant chiming in. Brock back on Friday. Why? WWE shit almost not worth it. I'll go one further there, Chris. We don't watch WWE anymore.
No, but
We keep
that's the.
tabs on what's going on, but I'll read it or Keith will read it, or a lot of times I get my WWE news through Keith because I don't even read it. It's become that unwatchable. I understand why you bring Brock back because they don't have anything right now. I mean, what else do they have to make you watch?
Yeah, they don't know how to build anybody anymore. They really don't. Roman Reigns is a guy that through perseverance and his own talents, and basically the fact that he managed to kind of get himself siloed where everything he does is filtered through Paul Heyman and Michael Hayes.
Right.
I mean, Paul Heyman and Michael Hayes could probably make me look like a fucking badass. You know, they're that creative and they're that good. And that's not to say Roman didn't have natural talent, because of course he did. And, you know, I think the internet, again, a lot of the AEW hardcores that liked it from the beginning, and I could see are going to probably be getting mad in another year or two when a lot of our favorites don't work there anymore or aren't featured on TV because the talent upgrades they're making now are going to phase them out, and only the best of the best are going to be able to stick around. You know, they love to crap on Roman. They love to say, "Oh, Roman's Vince's guy." Did it? Well, yeah, because look at Roman. If you really understand the business, look at Roman. He's the complete package.
Yeah, he's the prototypical Vince McMahon wrestler.
But just in general, he's great. Any company, if they looked at Roman Reigns and said, "I don't want that guy," stop. Get out of the wrestling business now. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your money.
The answer to Chris's question is Brock is back because they haven't built anybody else up, and they're trying, and they just bring people back like that to make you watch. You know, why do you think they bring Cena back once in a while?
Why do you think Bill Goldberg is basically put? You know, he's 50 something. He was never a great wrestler, but he has a name, and that's why they bring him in because they need names.
You know, I'm surprised they haven't. I'm surprised they haven't pulled, you know, the Undertaker card, not to wrestle. I'm just saying, like, to show up.
I'm sure they've talked to him. I'm sure they're begging him, and I think
But if you, Chris, interesting thing. I don't know if you've seen the Broken Skull sessions, all of them or not, but the last two Broken Skull sessions, episode 20 was with Seth Rollins, which is a really interesting one. He has a really good story about his matches with his series of matches with Brock Lesnar dating back to his cash-in at WrestleMania when Brock was taking on Roman and he cashed in the Money in the Bank. And then he had a run where with different matches at different pay-per-views with Brock Lesnar, and how at first he thought Brock Lesnar hated his guts, and it turns out that all you got to do is get on Brock's good side, which most people don't know is you leave a case of Coors Light in his locker, and all of a sudden you're Brock Lesnar's best friend. And then
I thought he would have to back up a dump truck of money to Brock's
store. No. Brock is actually, and Seth said this during the interview. You got to see it. It's cool. He said that Brock, sorry to burst your bubble, Brock. I hope you're not mad at me for saying this, but behind the scenes, Brock's one of the nicest guys he's ever met. But anyway, then episode 21 was Jeff Hardy, which he talked about his DUIs, his addiction, like all the demons he has fought and where he is now and where he was. And it was a very interesting conversation. Of course, he talked about the Hardys breaking in the first place, beach blonde hair and all that kind of stuff. Then the Brood with Gangrel and the TLC matches and all that cool stuff. He goes through all that, but then he talks about his time in Impact, and he also talks openly about whether or not he will reunite with his brother before they retire, which he obviously wants, and everybody, that's the biggest question that's asked about, you know, when his contract is up with WWE, will he stay with WWE or will he go with his brother? And he says, I'm not going to ever answer that question. I'm just going to let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah.
Which led me to believe he didn't want to openly say, yes, I'm going to go to AEW as soon as my contract is up, and piss off the powers that be at WWE while they're still paying him.
They're going to go there. And I mean, both of them are going to go where there's the most money to go ahead and do it. AEW is going to let them do the broken thing if they want to do that again, although I think that ship has sailed. I think Matt Hardy has kind of gone off the deep end a little bit with some of his creativity, and I think what you're finding is the broken stuff was good for its time.
They
and
talk about that too.
And
the
it
whole
also
thing.
and it also really worked because there was nothing going on in Impact at that time.
Hardy
So
Boys
Impact
get back
really,
together,
really
be awesome to see. But answer this, Chris. Answer this, buddy. Would you rather see the Hardy Boys reunite in AEW? Or would you rather them reunite in WWE? Because let's be honest, both are possible only because Vince has shown that he doesn't know how to build people anymore. So why not bring the Hardys back together in WWE world versus letting Jeff go to AEW and having the Hardys over there?
I mean, if I'm them, I'm looking at it as who's going to give me the most money and who am I going to have the best? Where are the best opponents going to be? Right now in WWE, Hardy's and New Day. Okay, and that's about it.
Well,
There's
would
really
you like to see Hardys and the Young Bucks? I mean, I know you hate the Young Bucks.
I hate the Young Bucks. I hate their style. I hate everything. The Young Bucks are terrible to me. They're overhyped. They're overrated. I think they're getting exposed. The audience is not responding to them as much. I think it won't be long before the Bucks are either completely behind the scenes or it's going to be another one of those situations where the Bucks are going to get sideways with a promotion. They're going to claim that the promotion doesn't understand them and blah, 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 blah. And really, it's going to be a case of, no, you got exposed. The audience saw what you do. They saw that you're a one-trick pony and you're gone. But again, I mean, I know there's money in the Young Bucks and the Hardys for a certain segment of a fan base. FTR and the Hardys could probably have great matches.
There you go.
There's some other young tag teams in AEW that are coming up. In WWE, what is even going to be left by the time both Hardys are on the market? They're firing.
I see your point there. I just
I
see
mean,
Vince
I don't know, and I mean, I don't know if the Hardys prioritize that. If
I
it's
could
all
just see
about
Vince
money,
saying the Hardys were a WWE grown, entity. Not to say that they wouldn't have had success if they had never been in WWE, but I could see Vince saying that he brought them in and made them superstars, and he doesn't want them to, he saw what they did he didn't even know what they did in Impact, right?
no, because he doesn't pay attention to anything.
Right.
That's been true for years. Vince does not watch other wrestling
He
products.
don't watch. Well, he watched WCW.
Not like you would think. He has advisors. Like he had Jim Ross. He had to a lesser extent Cornette, Bruce Pritchard, guys like that. They watch the other shows for him, and then they go back and make recommendations. And sometimes they have to really sell people because Vince doesn't watch anything. Vince knows enough to get preconceived notions about people. Like he didn't watch Mick Foley, but he had enough people telling him like, oh, this Cactus Jack guy just falls off his stuff and he's a deathmatch guy and he's just completely will not work for us. And Jim Ross sold him on it. And even then, Vince only signed him because Vince was like, I want to sign this guy, have him fail, so then you get your heart broken and you understand to stop putting your heart into talent evaluations. So he basically signed Mick Foley to, fuck with Jim Ross, and then he wound up making millions of dollars off of him.
For those of you just tuning in and looking for Cortez Castro, aka Ricky Reyes, he was in the gym when we went live at 6:00 and texted me back that he was just leaving the gym. So I am assuming he'll be on. I hope he'll be on. Again, our show's only an hour, so he's not going to get much time. If he goes on at this point, we're about 25 minutes in. So again, if you're looking for Ricky Reyes, aka Cortez Castro. Hopefully he will be on. Otherwise, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, Keith and I will have Wolfman from 3WA and SWO. And also back in the day, he was in Eastern Championship Wrestling before it came ECW. And he's been around the local scene in Pennsylvania, and he's an icon in York County. So tune in then, especially if you're part of the 3WA faithful. He'd love to hear from you. He has a podcast on Wednesday nights that he has people call in, and you can find that on Facebook under Wolfman Baker. It'll say Wolfman Baker Live. And basically on Wednesday nights, he goes on, and there's a phone number at the bottom of your screen. You can call him and talk to him live and ask him anything you want.
But you should try to keep it about wrestling.
But keep it about wrestling, yes. He has admitted to me that the majority of the people call him and they just have regular, normal phone conversations that you and I might have about sports or politics or the weather. But he wants you to call in to talk about wrestling, and they just don't do it. So if you call Wolfman on his podcast, do us a favor and Wolfman a favor and talk wrestling. Just talk some wrestling with the guy. But if you come on this show tomorrow and you comment, please keep the comments to wrestling, because anything non-wrestling related, I'm not even going to let him see.
I think I've done pretty good tonight. I only shit on the Young Bucks. I've actually been nice to AEW.
Have you guys seen or heard any good up and comers? Yes.
Oh yes.
We were at an independent show last night, Chris, called 3WA in Quakertown, where we saw a slew of newcomers, guys that could go somewhere in the business. By name, and Keith, stop me if you disagree, Merrick Miami.
Absolutely, Miami
continues to approve show in and show out, month in and month out, and he's also branched out in other places in the area, in the Philadelphia area, and the Pennsylvania area in general. He's even done a couple shows in New Jersey, so he is building a brand. Tony Batista, the current 3WA World Heavyweight Champion, just continues to look better. I mean, he's got the look, he's got everything. I don't know why anybody would not sign Tony Batista right now.
Fantastic. He's a great baby face. He's
you can see this, Chris. You can see these guys wrestle. They both wrestled last night, and you can see them wrestle and see for yourself. Go to WWWA Wrestling on YouTube. If you go on YouTube and you type in 3 W's and an A Wrestling on YouTube, and you'll see last night's event was called Slamsgiving. Our guest tonight, Cortez Castro, also wrestled, trying to regain his title against somebody who I think has a bright future too, if he works on his craft, and that'd be Greg the Mechanic Manuel, high impact champion there. Cortez Castro was a former high impact champion, and he stretched the kid to the limit. It was a very entertaining match, very brutal, because Cortez Castro doesn't mess around in the ring, Keith.
No. I would also say Urban Legend, who got a shot on AEW last week. Urban Legend is a guy. AEW should absolutely sign him up. I know if you watch the match, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, what are you talking about? He barely got to do anything, but what he did get to do, he did the right stuff.
He sold very well.
There's a ton on him.
And if you look up Urban Legend on YouTube and check out all his, I mean, he's associated with Money Mayweather. Urban Legend has, connections, and he's down there. He wrestles in Virginia, but he's down there right now in Florida trying to make a name for himself and trying to get signed by AEW. And he will be on this show December 26th, the day after Christmas, right before the new year. So hopefully he's got some good news on that show. I don't know anything. I'm not holding anything back, and I wouldn't be the kind of person to spill that anyway, because if the competitor gets a contract, obviously he wants to be the one to tell the world. So
I think Theo Ivory too is probably give him another couple, I'd say about 2 years, and I think he's really going to put everything together, and I think he's got a great shot at it. I'm trying to think who else I've been seeing recently. I see some guys in Outbreak, Matt Quay, for instance. I think
Yes.
Matt Quay has a real energy to him. He's a great baby face. I think he's great with connecting with a crowd. He has great energy. I think there's a ton of guys in the local area. I am shocked by how many guys are right in my backyard here in the Lehigh, just in the Lehigh Valley, that are either at a point where I could see them signed anytime between now and the next year.
Mm-hmm.
There are guys that I could see they're probably about 2 years off. They just need to they need to get the reps and they need to kind of put it together. Like they have one or two things that I think are really developed and ready to go now, but it's just something else. They need that extra ingredient. Either they've got the character and the promo down, but maybe the work needs to get a little better, or the work is there, but they need the character and the promo more.
Not to interrupt you, Keith, but Ricky Reyes is coming. He's just having difficulty.
Okay.
I'm going to resend him.
And I think, Chris, I think that's a great question for Ricky as well, because Ricky doesn't just wrestle, but Ricky also has seminars. He speaks to the young guys. He works with them. So I think he's going to have a great eye and a great mind for guys that he's seeing, that he's working with, that are, ready to go to that next level or getting close.
Yeah, in fact, Chris, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring that question back up when Cortez Castro pops up on here, which will be momentarily. He's clicking the link as we speak. So it'll be momentarily. So if you tuned in to talk to or send comments to Cortez Castro / Ricky Reyes, he'll be on here momentarily. Again, we saw him last night in a brutal matchup with the high impact champion in 3WA, Greg the Mechanic Manuel. And
that will be on that. Not to interrupt you, but that will be on YouTube if you guys are interested in checking that match out. And really, I think you should check out the whole show, because I think there's a little something for everybody on every show. You may not love everything, but I think you're going to find at least one match, one performer that you're going to connect with.
And that's and I really liked what Brian Hardy said about Flash Carter. Flash Carter's 20 years old, Chris. He's 20 years old, and the kid already has a ton of charisma. He's green. He's green, but
yeah, but he muscles.
But I tell you what, though, and joining us now live, I believe, is Ricky Reyes. Hey, Ricky.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's up?
How are you?
Fresh off of a show last night and fresh from the gym. How you doing?
Tired. Still have training.
We were at the show last night, and let me tell you something, brother. This is probably the third or fourth time I've seen you live, and you are brutal. You are brutal in the ring, the entire thing. The entrance, the face, the scowl, the look in the crowd, all that kind of thing. And then every move that is not wasted. You know what I mean? Like every move that you do in the ring is not wasted. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's talk about last night before we go back and talk about how you got into wrestling in the first place. And that is, how do you think you favored against the high impact champion on 3WA, Greg Manuel?
I thought it was good. I mean, it was a pretty competitive match. I think he's only been wrestling maybe 2 years or something, so he's pretty impressive for being so new to what we do,
Right.
But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was it was what I expected it to be. Pretty competitive, back and forth style match. That's what I like, and that's kind of my whole thing. So
yeah, I tell you, Keith and I have been a fan of 3WA for about as long as Greg's been wrestling. Like we first showed up at a 3WA event on their 40th anniversary, which was almost 2 years ago. And I tell you what, we haven't missed a show since, every month.
Yeah. Was that the outside show?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. So let's talk about Ricky Reyes. Once upon a time, Ricky Reyes fell in love with professional wrestling? Because I know you love it. Just reading your Facebook, your social media, I know how much you love this business, and you've been a part of it now for 20 some years or whatever. So what made you fall in love with professional wrestling in the first place?
I mean, a combination of things. I mean, I was just like a young kid watching it and just, seeing these big guys throw each other around and the crowd going crazy. Like, I remember the actual, I mean, as far back as my very first match I ever watched on television, I can still remember it was watching Hulk Hogan beat the Iron Sheik for the WWF title. And I remember me and my brother and my dad watching, and I was like, oh my God, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up. And I just remember thinking like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. And just kind of made up my mind at like, 6 years old that that's what I wanted to do. And I just loved it. And then, of course would go to school, and I was the weird kid that had all the wrestling magazines in my backpack. And, I'd open my books and then put the magazine in front of, and like I would be reading my book, but I would have my magazines in the front. And, I had like a handful of friends that, were wrestling fans, and we'd sit at recess and talk about it. And it's just, I don't know, just fell in love with it, and I just kind of made up my mind then that I was going to find a way to do it. I didn't really obviously know how or what, but I definitely was just loved it and loved everything about it. So it was never really work for me.
So how old were you when you found out how when you found out how you could get into the business? Where did you train and who trained you?
So I mean, when I started looking for wrestling schools, by the time I was old enough to, really try to look into that stuff, it was mid to late 90s. And so I was going through the magazines, and I didn't know anything about independent wrestling very much. I mean, I read like, Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Ringside magazines and all the different type of magazines they had back then. That's how you kind of found out different states and different, territories that were like Puerto Rico. I read a lot about Puerto Rico, Global Wrestling Federation in Dallas, after like the Von Erichs era was done, that Global started. So, you'd read about wrestlers and stuff like that, but then you'd read way in the back, they'd have like listings like Minnesota, and then it'd just be like random independent shows, basically is what it was, and I didn't know that. And I was like reading about these guys, and once in a while you see a picture of them, and it, like when Demolition left WWF, it was like they were wrestling and the independents, and I was like, Demolition's here, like this is crazy, as a kid, understand it, right? So
Right.
You're like starstruck, you're like, oh my God, like what is this, and then eventually I found Ultimate Warrior's school in Phoenix, Arizona. So I remember I called a bunch of times and left, voicemails and on the answering machine, and didn't really hear anything back. And then I was, I grew up in Southern California, so I found APW, which was up in Hayward, California, which is like Northern California, San Francisco area. So that was 8 hours from me. But I remember that the promoter there actually picked the phone up, and he was like, APW wrestling. And I was like, didn't know what to say. I was like, I was 16, 17. And I was like, yeah, I want to be a wrestler. He's like, yep, if you have a down payment, $500, you can come here and blah, blah, blah. So I kind of, had that in the back of my mind all through high school. Like, all right, how do I get out of school and, get to this training stuff? So eventually I found a school nearby, San Bernardino, which was a school of hard knocks pro wrestling. Mm-hmm. Jesse Hernandez ran that. And at the time, his partner was Bill Anderson. Mm-hmm. And they were independent. They were, California, Tijuana wrestlers for years, and worked for WWF more in a backstage role, and Jesse was a referee for a very long time for WWF. Like when they would come to the West Coast, you know, Bill would ring announce, and Jesse was a referee for them on their West Coast swings. Basically, what when they would do house shows, they were booked as talent, so they didn't have to fly everyone back and forth. So they were running a wrestling school, and I found it in a magazine. It said Guide to Independent Pro Wrestling. I'll never forget it. And it was like a yellow banner on the top of the wrestling magazine, and I saw it in the corner of my eye. And I remember grabbing it and like tearing the page out of the magazine because I didn't want to buy the magazine. I didn't have extra money, So I was like, well, I'm taking this shit home, and put it in my pocket, and I called them. And then when I called them, they were like, yeah, come down, and check it out. And they weren't big on like down payments or big into money. They were like, look, you don't pay, you don't play. It's simple as that.
Right.
It's $25 a practice. We practice 4 times a week. If you want to be on the shows, you got to be at every practice. So I was like, I'm in. Here's my money. And that was kind of it, how I started, at least.
I got a guy named Mark Mest here saying, hey, guys.
Mark.
Mean Mark.
Yeah.
Colleen Bowling. Hi, Mom. Saying, hey, all right. So name some of the places that you've wrestled, because I know you've wrestled all around the world, as you alluded to earlier, and you've been in it a while. So all over the country, Puerto Rico and places like that. So name some of the places and some of your most memorable matches that you consider that you left it out on the table, that you're most proud of, let's say.
I mean, for the most part, I try to be, pretty proud of everything that I leave out there. Every match is big for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've wrestled for New Japan, which I do now. I currently just started back with them in October, but I started in the LA dojo in Santa Monica in 2002 when Inoki had opened up the original LA dojo.
Right.
I was a part of that group with Brian Danielson, TJP, Rocky Romero, me, and Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura. Couple guys you might know.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of some of them.
I heard of some of those guys.
Most of them never made it, but
yeah.
Anyways. So like, we had a pretty stacked little group there, but it was pretty much just us and like maybe a couple other like local guys that trained with us, at least, because it was really tough, intense training. We basically were training as MMA fighters more so than pro wrestlers, because Mr. Inoki believed in Inokiism, which was a style of wrestling that's more legitimate, more like a work shoot style of wrestling,
kind of more hard hitting.
Yeah, but it works now, but it didn't work then in the States, right? Because people in the United States in 2002 didn't know or care about the UFC.
Right.
Now it's completely mainstream, and it's another brand like the NFL, right? So people understand a submission, but in 2002 we were doing flying triangle chokes and arm bars and spinning back kicks and knee bars and stuff, and people in the States didn't understand what it was that we were doing, really. Like you had if you had 300 people at a show, you might have 5 to 10 people that were familiar with a submission style maneuver, right? But the masses were like, they just looked at it like it was boring, like, oh, they're just laying on their backs, So when we started there, we trained there for almost a year and tried out. They sent down Liger. They sent down Mr. Chono first. He came down and spent the week with us. Then they started sending some of the young boys like Yoshi Tatsu. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I know him, yes.
Yeah, so like the young boy group that was in Tokyo, they came to train with us for like 6 months, and that included Shinsuke Nakamura before he had his debut match. So they all trained with us, and then Mr. Liger came down with Nagata, and then our third tryout was in front of the actual booker, Mr. Uai, who was Mr. Inoki's like right-hand man. Right. And then he came down to see what all the buzz was about. So we had like a whole day of like tryout matches, and like, you know, so we just went out there and just did our thing. And because we did that style, and Mr. Uai understood the style that which Inoki wanted to push, so that's how we got booked originally for New Japan. To make things worse and more nerve-wracking for kids in their third year of wrestling, they booked us our debut match in the Tokyo Dome.
Oh my God!
Against Jushin Liger, Tiger Mask 4, and Mr. Kakihara, who is a legitimate shoot fighter.
Right.
So we were the opening match of the Dome in front of 65,000 people. So
wow. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure.
And TJP was 17 when he went to Japan the first time. So he's the youngest foreigner to ever step foot in the Dome as a wrestler. So
now, I mean, for fans that don't understand in the States, because Japan is a bit more of a different animal, could you kind of talk about some of the differences in style? Like in the States, we like more of the entertainment. In Japan, there's still more of that feeling of this is real, this is a sport, this is competition. You know, could you talk about some of the pros and cons of that you feel like the differences, what's better about that, what's maybe not as good, like where you would have a preference for one or the other?
Well, it's more the culture of Japan. They're more familiar with martial arts and stuff. There's some schools that require you take a martial arts while you're in school. So like that's like science to them, you know, it's kind of part of what they do and what they're always around. That's why like K1 kickboxing and Pride FC was so huge there, you know. I mean, there was so much money because it was such a popular thing, you know. The fans have always appreciated I would say the competition, right? Not so much the winning and losing. So it's like you can lose every night, but if you laid it all on the line out there, they just appreciated your effort, you know. So it's more about the culture. It's just a more respectful culture. They understand, you know, like what you're doing. You know, that like pro wrestling fans now, I think, are getting a little more into that, because we see now on TV guys debuting on television and losing, but having that good back and forth match that and then they're just as over in that loss as, you know, as they were before, right? Like the excitement of it. So it's not, it was like that always in Japan, really. I mean, that's what the guys, and even in the territory days, always said, you know, it's like, you know, like the knock, not even a knock, but it was like the word around the locker room is like, oh, you got to know how to wrestle to go to Japan, you know, to make money there. So it was always kind of like the quote unquote worker territory, I think, you know, like you knew you were going to go in there every night and you were going to work, you know, and work hard. So I think the fans over the generations and the wrestlers, you know, it built it into, that's what it's become, you know, now. So I remember one time Billy Gunn came to the LA dojo. We were training China. She was getting ready for a match against Mr. Chono, and she went and picked him up from the airport because they were flying into LA. So he stopped by just to like visit or whatever, and he kind of like made a remark of like, you know, oh, you guys wrestle in Japan? And we were like, yeah, we just got back a couple weeks ago. And he goes, oh, so you guys actually know how to wrestle? And he kind of like laughed about it. He goes, I'm just an entertainer, you know? And like, we all kind of like laughed, you know? And then now like being older now in the business and kind of understanding what that monster is as WWE, you know, it's like, it really is, you know, it's a different world. So it really comes down to the culture, to answer your question. And it's been that way forever, you know, and it's not, I don't think it'll ever change. Like, if you guys don't keep up with Pro Wrestling Noah and All Japan Pro Wrestling and New Japan, you know, it's pretty much the same. Like, they don't venture off into like too much. New Japan would be as, you know, quote unquote sports entertainment, the closest thing to a sports entertainment. And that's more, they just have more sizzle on the entrance now and the setups, right? So, but it's still all about the steak, you know. Like, it's all about getting it done. The bell's got to ring, and you still have to deliver that, and that's the most important thing, you know.
I find it interesting that you talk about the culture, or talk about professional wrestling now as compared to when you started, because I watched a Broken Skull Sessions with Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was talking to Jeff Hardy. And they showed Jeff Hardy's debut match in WWE, and it was against Scott Hall, aka Razor Ramon. And he had a job to him, right? And I mean, he got nothing in, nothing. Right. Like Razor destroyed him in like less than 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay. Fast forward to nowadays, like you said, somebody could make their debut on something like even AEW or NXT and look just as good in the loss, as you mentioned, where back in the 80s and 90s, that didn't happen.
Right.
Well, I find that interesting.
Yeah, Jay Lethal debuted at AEW and lost, right? Like his in-ring debut.
Right.
Right. But that doesn't take anything off Jay.
Right.
God, no.
Because it's not as secretive anymore, I guess. And the real art of what we do, it's like, it's tough to say, because it's like everyone knows what pro wrestling is, even in Japan. Like, they understand what it is, right? But like in Japan, it's not as, you know, you're not winking and nodding at the camera as much about anything, really. So in that sense, that's what, you know, it's a little more quote unquote serious there. And then here, you can get away with a wink and a nod every now and again. You know, it's almost like you're letting everyone in on the secret, and it's fun for people. Right. You know, some people don't like that. And I get why they don't like it. Part of me doesn't like it either. But then I think there's a time and a place for that. You know, I really do. Like, I think that if you're going to have a 2-hour show, you got to have a little bit of something for everybody, right? Like, you know, I'm not a big comedy wrestling guy, but I believe that serves a purpose at some point in the event. Sure. You know, my son, you know, like when New Day was just a gimmick and there was all three of them, he thought they were the coolest thing. You know, so I kind of watch wrestling to see how this all really works, because he's 6, right? You know, and like, you know, like when Finn Balor's the Demon, he's like, you know, he's like, wow, like, you know, he doesn't really know if he's a good guy or bad guy. He just knows that he's creepy looking, right? You know, and he notices when he gets mad in the ring, you know, and it's like New Day, you're like, oh man, in my mind, I'm like, man, these 3 guys can go, and they got him doing this. But my son's like watching and he likes it. And I'm like, but they're good wrestlers, so it's okay. Because when they do get a 4 to 6 minute match, it's good. It's not bad, you know. But then in AEW, it's more of a wink and a nod. Right. You know, they'll say things to kind of like, and it works for their crowd, for their audience, you know. And if they're happy with it, who's to say it's wrong?
Right. So WWE appeals to
the masses,
right? The masses, and everybody. And AEW appeals to like smart marks,
to their fans, right? But AEW, but at the same time, like, you gotta look at it this way too. AEW's the pro wrestling fans' pro wrestling show, right? Like, you're talking about dream matches, Rocky Romero against Daniel Bryan. Yeah,
Right.
that's happened a million times, and I'm tired of seeing it, to be honest with you. But at the same time, you know, wrestling fans that know of those guys and their history, you know, that's a dream match to them. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And what they did was just, you know, sucked everybody in with wrestling, you know, and then the next segment's Orange Cassidy, you
Right.
know, and it's
Right.
like
Right.
it's very a bipolar like
Yes.
type of 2 hours,
Yes.
right? But I mean, there's comedy stuff in horror movies sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Right.
I mean, you know, you're not watching the crane, you know, shoot the shot, but there is all, you know, it's like you need someone to slip and fall and say something stupid every now and again just to get a chuckle out, you know. So it's
Right.
like, you know, I think sometimes people maybe overanalyze things
Yeah.
instead of just sitting back and say, man, just enjoy the show, like, you
See,
know.
pre-show last night, I had this very same conversation with Brickhouse and Merrick Miami,
Mhm.
and they were of the opinion they were of the opinion that they wish that it was a little bit more like kayfabe, right? Like
Right.
that the
I
curtain
understand.
was more drawn,
Right.
and
Okay.
and why does everybody need to know everything? And I said, listen, I'm 45 years old. I'm old school.
Right.
You know, I wish it was like that too. I wish
Right.
I didn't know as much as I know, but from knowing as much as I know, and I've gotten into, into the independent scene locally here, I have enjoyed myself more in the past 2 years as a wrestling fan than I did for years at WWE and going to their events. I used to go every time WWE was in either New York or Philly, I'd go. And I, so I would but going to these local events in Harrisburg and Quakertown and places like that, and just getting to know these guys and kind of rooting for them behind the scenes, kind of rooting for them to have a really good match, or have rooting for them to just be safe, not get hurt, and succeed, because, and I wanted to ask you that question too. Do you think lately, over the past, I would say, what, 2 or 3 years, that the destination for wrestlers who want to succeed in this business, or what they would call success, meaning making money off of this for a living, used to be WWE, but now it's kind of shifting to AEW?
It's an option. Sure. I mean, and that's what we need, right? I
Mhm.
mean, we don't even know if it's really competition yet, because
Right.
to be honest with you, if it was, they wouldn't be trimming so much fat over there in New York, you know, and
Right.
Mhm.
letting very, very talented people go.
Crazy. Right.
And
Crazy some of the people they've let go.
in my mind, I'm kind of hoping that well, I'm not hoping that people lose their jobs, but
Right.
I'm hoping that there's a more influx of, you know, WWE talent into AEW to help uh steer that ship a little, you know, because those guys will come in with a little bit of stroke and be able to call their own shots a little bit more
Right.
and have a bigger following than maybe like a random indie guy. Like, you know, like for me to go to AEW doesn't, you know, it only helps me, right? But a Buddy Murphy coming to AEW helps AEW.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
um,
Was it ever a dream of yours to wrestle for WWE? Because you've wrestled everywhere else pretty much.
yeah, I mean, I did some stuff for them like early on, and I did darks, you know, before I was with Lucha Underground and everything. And I mean, yeah, at first, yeah. I mean, at first, yes, because when you don't know anything, you think that being in WWE fixes everything, and then it's all, you know, rainbows and sunshine and butterflies. But the fact of the matter is, like, that, you know, that could be the start of your problems, you know, because
Mhm.
the more that's at stake, you know, the tougher the lifestyle and the tougher the job becomes, you know. So like when I got into high school and I made my mind up, well, not made my mind up, but I refocused myself and thought about, okay, in 2 years, I thought I'm going to be graduating here and I'm going to be a wrestler. I didn't know how or what, but I knew that I needed to learn how to wrestle to be a wrestler. So I just I quit the basketball team and went out for the wrestling team. Like I just woke up one day and like that was it. I was like, I'm gonna be a wrestler. I gotta try out for the wrestling team. I remember walking into the gym and talking to the coach, and he's like, "But don't you play basketball?" And I was like, "Not anymore." Like, well, why do you want to wrestle? And I was like, "Because I'm gonna be a pro wrestler when I graduate high school." So that went over like a fart in church. And then I was like, I gotta learn how to wrestle. I saw these tapes of these guys in Japan, like they're doing real wrestling moves in Japan, and they're small, and I want to wrestle that style. Ironically enough, like Jushin Liger and Scott Steiner and and like Dynamite Kid, Chris Benoit, the usuals. And I just thought it was so cool that they would go over there and wrestle so hard and whatever. So like I really wanted to wrestle in Japan. Like that was my first goal. There was a moment in 2006, I think Tommy Dreamer was booking talent for like darks and stuff, or in 2004 he booked me originally in 2004, and I worked like Carlito in a dark match and Viscera, and I don't know, I did a couple like backstage bullshit whatever with the cruiserweights.
Cool.
So I did that stuff. And I remember I had Johnny Ace's email, and like I waited a couple years and did that, and I moved out to the East Coast. And I remember I emailed Johnny Ace. Obviously, I never got a reply, but I said, I just want to go to WWF, so All Japan will book me. Can you just book me in All Japan?
I've heard that story before.
And
I have heard that exact story that you did that before. You're like somewhat legendary for having done that.
I just didn't care.
Everybody's like, wait a minute, you want to go to WWE so All Japan will book you?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, wait, doesn't he have that backwards? Isn't it supposed to be the other way around?
I wanted to get fired from WWE, so All Japan would book me, like right away. And and I obviously like I never heard back. I mean, not that I was checking my email every day though. I was like, so like, I did a couple more, shots for them and stuff. And then, I just figured, well, I talked to a couple people in All Japan, and I really didn't want to try to go back to New Japan just because, I didn't want to feel like I was calling, friends or calling in favors. I wanted to go somewhere where I thought, I get there on my own, and I did it on my own. And it's because they wanted me, not because, oh, he's so-and-so's buddy. Like, let's use him, So I've never been that guy, considering the fact that like, like my best friends are like CM Punk, Samoa Joe, and, like TJP and all these guys, and right. I mean, most people ask like, well, how come you just don't call them and tell them you want to be, an AEW, whatever. And it's like, right. That's not really that's not going to make me happy. Right. I'd like to be more useful, and I've made a lot of money, and I've saved it, and I'm good. Like, I don't, especially at this point in my career, like if they want me, they know where I'm at, and they can come get me.
It seems like you're booked a lot, though. It seems like you're wrestling almost every weekend.
Yeah.
Is that by your choice?
Yeah.
I mean, like you wouldn't have it any other way. You want to be booked like every weekend, and it doesn't matter where. You just put you on the card.
I have to wrestle. I have to. Like it's hard. I mean, I could take a weekend off here and there, but I can guarantee by that 6th or 7th day, not knowing I don't have something coming up tomorrow, then I'm like sitting around thinking, well, where can I go train? I'll do a double training. I'll do a triple training this week. I'll go Friday to Mark Mess, and then I'll go to Super Crazy, and then I'll go to Monster Factory. I'll wrestle more on my off weekends than I will when I have 2 or 3 shows, because I'll be training 3 hours each day. I'll have 9 hours of ring time, you know, because I can't not do it. So
And I think
it is by design. But like I feel like, and Triple H even brought this up a while back, like when he says he was talking about doing the once a year matches like Undertaker was doing. Like those are the worst times, because when you take a long layoff and then you try
Right.
to get in the ring,
Back in the ring shape.
it's a
Mhm.
completely, you can cardio all you want at the gym, but getting knocked down and pulling yourself back up and all those other things, and then your body's not conditioned and calloused up enough to take that abuse, it's hard, right? So like,
They were trying to get him to use him as much as possible before he just
yeah,
couldn't do it no more.
right. And I understand it, but like, I feel like, well, the COVID shutdown, messed me up like it did everybody,
Right.
So I was like, well, I never want to do that again, And I remember telling my wife at one point, I was like, if this is retirement, fuck that. I'm never retiring, because I can't stand not having somewhere to go. Like, like I would walk by my bag like every week and just be like depressed, and I was like, it's my job to stay in shape and be ready.
Mhm.
And if they don't want me around, then they don't have to book me, but they
Well,
book me.
well,
And constantly.
speaking of being booked and being ready, you have a show this Friday for ECPW's live
Yeah.
event in New Jersey. You want to talk about that at all?
Yes, I will be hopefully winning the heavyweight title from my good buddy Kenny, who's been holding on to that thing for a while. This will be our second match, actually. We wrestled last month for it, and he slipped away. So I'm looking forward to this week's match. I'm pretty excited.
So if people want to check that out, that's in Rochelle Park, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Tickets are $15 in advance, $20 at the door, and you can go to ecpw1.com for details. And if you want to see this guy wrestle live, Keith and I have had the privilege of doing so as recent as last night, which was awesome as usual. Talk a little bit about Lucha Underground, because that they bill you from that in 3WA, which I personally like. I think to myself when say like last night we're at ringside and Carolina Jim's announcing you as the Lucha Underground superstar Cortez Castro. I think to myself, why do they have to say that? Like, why do they have to say Lucha Underground? If anybody knows you, I mean, is that by
Yeah.
do you ask them to do
No.
that, or they just do that for some added sprinkles?
Yeah, I think it's more, it's all them. Like, they always ask me, like a lot of places say, oh, how am I supposed to advertise you? And I tell people, whatever's going to draw the most, attention,
Right.
and they feel that that's something that they want to do. And it doesn't, at the end of the day, once the bell rings, it's my job to deliver what I do. So it's irrelevant. They can call me, ham sandwich number 4 coming to the ring now. They're still going to get the
I hope
same.
they don't call you ham sandwich number 4.
Yeah,
But they're still going to get the same, match. And
I mean,
and
how
same.
long were you there? How long were you in Lucha Underground?
I actually was the very first wrestler that they signed to a contract.
Oh, neat.
So I was there the longest until the end. Yeah.
Wow.
I stayed on that ship till it sank. So.
And
admire your loyalty, because that was one of those things where it was good for a while, and then towards the end there, it just seemed like every week there was another story of how dysfunctional it was. There was talk about the contracts barred you guys from working anywhere else or working with anyone else unless they gave you permission. And
Okay, well, all right. So let's touch on that then. So everybody had the same deal. They all knew what they had when they signed it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they knew what they were signing up for, which was not a wrestling promotion.
Right.
It was a television series.
Right.
Like, there's a big difference there. Like Modern Family doesn't go on the road and do house shows. Like, you know what I mean? So, while you're in season, you're working. And then when you're out of season, you are not. Depending on how, to be honest with you, depending on how much of a headache and an asshole you were in the back and the problem, then they could make your life a problem. So, I mean, it's like if you guys own your own business, right? And you walk into your business and you got dipshit number 4 behind the counter and you hate this guy, and what's he going to complain about today, right? You're probably not going to give him the schedule that he wants. You're not going to give him the things that he's not going to go on break when he wants. It's you know what I mean? It's like that in any business, right? So I was literally called by one of the executive producers. They did a house show. They did some Southwest tour, like through Texas, maybe after our first or second year. And it was basically Cricket Wireless sponsored it. So they bought like 3 shows, right? So I wasn't on any of them, no big deal. I mean, it did hurt my feelings, but the whole crew, the group I was in, the crew, we weren't on any of them. So it wasn't like they just needed me, or just picked me. Like our angle wasn't hot on television, so they just didn't need us, right? So anyways, I spoke with some people that were in charge when we were going into the next season, and I was talking to the guy, Eric, and I told him, I said, are we doing any more house shows? You guys didn't have me or the crew on the house shows. And he said, oh shit, you're right. And he was like, you know what? Now that I think about it, we could have used you guys, but you in particular, at least, are one of the few adults in the back, meaning you don't cause problems. You don't miss your flights.
Right.
We're not worried about you doing something in your room that you're not supposed to be doing. You're not a problem child. Right. We refer to you and so and so as the few adults that we have. Like, like you show up to work on time, you're sober,
right.
You go, you wave the flag, you promote the brand, So I was never, like with the other people, I'm not saying everybody on the shows were a problem, but like a few of them would complain about money and this and that and everything else. So, they went ahead and we'll put them on, kind of basically all right, shut up. Like, here, you're on, you happy type thing, and that's only a few of them. But those few were the ones that were, voicing their dislike of what was happening. And basically what was happening was when Lucha Underground finally ended, we didn't really know when it did or did not actually end, right? Because season 4 ended, there was an investor there that was very interested. Rumors were that he was all about, buying like 12 episodes, and that was going to put us up to like 24 for season 5. They were working on trying to get it up to 41. They were negotiating with sponsors. Like, all this stuff takes time,
Right.
So in that time, okay, like maybe WWE was sweet on this person and that person. So instead of saying, hey, can I get my release, or can I go do this, or anything like that, they decided to cry on social media about it, So then the dirts get hold of it, right? And then they need clickbait, so it turns into so-and-so in contract dispute with Lucha Underground. Now I'm going to indie shows and everyone's like, oh man, must suck to be you guys, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't do this and can't do that. Like, first off, I didn't ask for my release and I don't care when it comes.
Right.
Like, I have this show to worry about, you know what I mean? And then my next one, and I'm my own business, so I'm not worried about it.
Right.
We're not in season, so they have no say on what I do. Right. But I didn't run around and make a big stink about it, and I didn't complain about it. I was dealing with the same stuff. I had feelers from 2 other places, and I said, I'm good. Because if Lucha Underground does come around for the 5th season, I'd like to be a part of it, because I put a lot of hard work into that place, and I was proud of my work there.
Right.
And people that did watch it, they loved it. And I thought if we could get one more, and end it, the right way, I thought, great. I'd like to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of a watered down 2.0 version of it. No, don't email me with, hey, you're in Philadelphia, you want to do this? No, I don't. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to be the 2.0 version of this. No, like, if you want me for other things, let's talk. If you want me for that, that chapter is done, and so it's like, it was really blown out of proportion by a handful of people with loud voices. That's what it comes down to.
You seem to have embraced this point in your career, just basically wrestling. Whoever wants you on the card, you wrestle. All right. You mentioned some people have put in your ear, why don't you talk to your buddies and try to get you in AEW? And what makes you happiest is just wrestling and being your own boss, being able to wrestle wherever you want to wrestle. And what I've noticed is a lot of times, a lot of the guys you work with are maybe young up and comers that you can work with and try to help get better. Do you find yourself in that role at this point in your career? And if so, have you seen any, there was a question earlier before you came on from a buddy of ours that said, have you seen guys that, or have heard of guys up and comers, most recently that you could say, hey, yeah, if he works hard, I could see him going places.
I mean, absolutely. That was kind of always my goal, like, or at least one of them, because when I first started in Southern California, like, Chris Daniels was a guy who helped train like me and Rocky and TJ and Frankie Kazarian, and I really, to this day, still look up to Chris so much. Sure. He was so good and still is amazingly, right? Like, we called him old man Daniels in 98, right? So he's like ancient man Daniels now, right?
20 years later.
Yeah, right. It's crazy. And he could still outwork 90% of any locker room he's in. So I mean, I always looked up to Chris because when he was doing those indie shows that we were all on together, he didn't have to come in slacks and a button-up shirt and a coat and sunglasses and look like a rock star, but he did. You know what I mean? He was coming to the San Bernardino High School gymnasium that night. And when he walked through the door, everyone stopped talking and everyone said the same thing. I want to be that good. Right. Like from walking into the building, tearing the house down, and then walking out. Like, it was just another night for Mr. Daniels, and like, I always remember that. And I thought, man, it must be so cool to walk into every locker room and just have everyone's respect because of the body of work that he's done without WWE. Keep in mind. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So now I was, ironically enough, talking to my wife about it and saying, like, I feel like I'm kind of maybe not on that high of a level, but like, I definitely feel like a lot of guys, when I meet them, they're like, oh man, like, I've seen you do this and that. And or the best is when guys are excited to wrestle me. Sure. Or, and yeah, like, this is my turn to be, that guy. And I look at it like, if Chris can still get up and do it, and he's as old as dirt, I can still get up and do it. It's just a matter of keeping myself in shape. Sure. And being ready to go for the next one. So yeah, like, I mean, I'm definitely at that point where if there's 10 locker rooms I walk into, I'd say 8 of them, most of the guys have, know of me, and that's that's a really good feeling, right? Because like, at the end of the day, no matter what job you do, we all want the same thing, and it's to be appreciated.
Sure.
It really is. You could have a shitty paying job, right? But if the boss or the owner walks up to you every day, shakes your hand, puts his hand on your shoulder and says, thanks, man, you do a great job.
Mm-hmm.
You're ready to run through a brick wall for that guy. Right? I mean, seriously, like, think about that.
Yeah, I have that. I'm fortunate enough to have that.
and
Yeah.
and now you'll go that extra mile, right? When you need to, you know what I mean? And that's where I'm at in wrestling, right? So like, I mean, now I get to go and I get to sit back and watch guys, you know, and I look at guys like you say, up and comers that are going to be great. Okay, so you know, on Team Filthy, you know, they have in New Japan Strong, that entire crew is tomorrow's, you know, superstars. You know
Cool.
what I mean? Chris Bay, like there's another stud. Like you can't teach that kind of charisma, that star power. You know what I mean? Like when you look at these certain events, like maybe like a MLW or something, you're going to see like, you know, Fatu, right?
Right.
Like a Hammerstone, like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like guys like that, like Bay, you know, on Impact. I mean, you know, and then you look deeper into those promotions, and then you got the older guys that have been around, like the Eddie Edwards, you know, and guys like that, that you know, those guys are taking Eddie's advice and going out there and doing exactly what he said and making it their own, you know.
Right.
And you know, I'm lucky enough to be still, you know, kept myself in good health to where I can at least keep up with those guys, you
Right.
know, and kind of just help direct them, you know, at least in the right direction, you know, just kind of like move them along, right? Like I told a couple guys last night, I said, we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just making sure it rolls smoothly here, you
Right.
know. And that's what Triple WA is. Like some of those guys there are not very good, you know. Then you have a couple of them that are really good, but they don't really know it,
Right.
because they need to be in the ring with somebody maybe like me, or maybe someone that has at least 10 plus years to tell them, hey man, you're good, like here's how you get better, you know. And I don't go around, I certainly don't go around tooting my own horn. I don't go around telling people things. If somebody asks me something, I can give my honest opinion on my version of it,
Right.
you know, my look on it, right? And my look is more of like how Mr. Inoki was teaching me, like make this look real out there for that moment. And I tell guys, like, everyone knows what pro wrestling is today, and that's great. But if you can get them to just kind of lose themselves in what you're doing for that moment, you win. You know,
And that's what I love about it. I mean, that's what I love about it. If I'm whether I'm watching on TV or whether I'm sitting ringside, I lose myself in that world for 2 hours, 3 hours, and I just, you know, I look at a match, and nowadays I just appreciate everything that goes into a match, and I appreciate the hard work that you guys put yourselves through to entertain me. And
Right.
I've been a fan of it for over 40 years. And as a kid, of course, I was enthralled with, you know, the
Right.
superheroes and all that kind of stuff, and you know,
course.
Hogan versus Andre the Giant and all that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then fast forward now to now, I appreciate the art of it and the hard work, and the you guys are putting your body on the line for my entertainment thing. And I look at a match as you know, I just look at it. I'm not looking for flaws or botches. What I'm looking for is chemistry and just a good flow, and just this, you tell a story in the ring. And man, one of your matches recently that I thoroughly enjoyed was September. I believe it was September's event where you wrestled Tony Batista. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
You and Tony Batista seem to have a really good chemistry in the ring. You complimented each other. You're a smaller, faster guy, but still pretty damn tough. I mean, you're picking up a big man like him, like he weighs 100 pounds. And the back and forth between you guys, it was hard hitting. It was very entertaining. You told a really good story in the ring. I really enjoyed that match.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the art of it, you know. And that's the first time Tony and I touched, you know. So that's a compliment to him as well, you know.
Yeah.
And like we all know what pro wrestling is, you know. It's like just let it be, you know. It's like I hate when people are like want to compare it to something else. I tell people all the time, we don't compare pro wrestling to anything. they compare pro wrestling to us.
Right.
You know, look at the UFC. Who the hell do you think they copied all that shit from?
Oh, well, absolutely. It's blatant.
Totally.
They don't get from wrestling.
Since the push of Tito Ortiz, that's all WWE influenced right there.
Totally.
Right? Him and Ken Shamrock at Vendetta UFC 40 was the start of the promo era for the UFC.
Yep.
Turned into like him flipping Ken off, Ken freaking out,
right,
Ken snapping and, you know, ready to kill somebody. You know, everyone had a gimmick then. You know, everyone had an angle. You know, this, that, and the other. Then, oh, now you're going to make a Tough Enough series. Oh, okay. Oh, so Ken and Tito are going to be coaches. Oh, I wonder if anyone's going to break out into a fight. Oh, what are we doing? A contract signing tonight? What do you think's going to happen? You know, like who's flipping the table? You know, I tell people all the time, pro wrestling is its own thing. Doesn't need to be compared to any. People compare everything to pro wrestling, right? These politicians are like, oh, this is as fake as WWE. It's like, yeah, guess what? You know what WWE is, sucker. Like, so you just put us over, you know?
Right.
And that's what's beautiful about what we do, right? It's like, even during this whole, you know, shutdown and everything else, what was the one constant? You know, whether you liked it or not, there was a live Monday Night Raw. While we, you know, and I say we because we would all do it if we were all working there.
Sure.
All showed up for work, ready to go, right? Yep. Because it's never ending. They had to
wrestle in front of 0 fans for
at one point, just in an empty room.
Right.
Think about. Here's another thing too. Like on that note, think about the ass whooping that Drew McIntyre took in front of a production crew for WrestleMania.
Yes. For the crowdless WrestleMania.
Can we all anoint Drew McIntyre as the toughest man in the world? Like,
I won't say no.
Brock Lesnar beat the shit out of him in front of guys holding cameras.
Yes.
In an empty arena.
I felt bad that he didn't have that.
Right. So do I.
WrestleMania moment where he won the title in front of a big stadium crowd or something like that.
I say the same thing. Like when he booted Brock out of the Rumble, that was the start of what should have been twice as big of an eruption with him winning the belt.
Yeah, a huge run, and it just all kind of fell. COVID kind of fell on his lap. So yeah, but
he showed up. He still showed up for work. I mean, you know what I mean? Like that's. I mean, no one says, "Oh, well, you know, thanks WWE Monday Night Raw for being on every." No, it's always what. Oh, they just fired 17,000 people. Right. Okay, well, guess what? All those people were gladly paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. They didn't save it. I don't know what that's on them.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like they're doing what they have to do for their business, but it doesn't, it shouldn't. Things like, giving these guys and girls a place to make a good living, gets overlooked kind of quick, because it's sexier to complain and bitch and cry about something than it is to say, hey, like now I can go anywhere in the world and write my own ticket.
Well, man, listen, we're going to let you out of here with one more question. And that question is, because you've wrestled countless number of competitors all over the country for over 20 years now, all kinds, big names, small names, what you name it, you've wrestled Japan, blah, everything that you've talked about this entire hour. I want to know, is there a wrestler that you have not wrestled yet that you would like to before you hang the boots up?
I'd love to wrestle Dolph Ziggler.
I would pay to see that match. I would pay good money. I know Alan would, because you said the magic name.
Because like when I was doing Darks, he was unfortunately for him bumping for Ryback every night.
Right.
So I was just like watching him. It was maybe Philadelphia, but he was like, they were doing like a main event taping or something, and Ryback was throwing him from one end of the ring to the other. And it's like, people don't understand. That's how that dude is Monday through Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like that dude gets tossed all over the ring every night. Like he's made that his thing. And he's
Right.
like a rubber human, you know?
Right.
Like how bad does his back feel getting off a plane or
Yeah,
something, you know?
next to Kurt Hennig, I'd call him the greatest seller of all time.
Probably. I would have to agree. And like I just think like, you know, I think we all feel the same way about Dolph. All of us wrestling fans are in the wrestling business. Like we feel bad that he didn't get more of a more time in, you know, in the spotlight, I guess, you know, like
Right, because he had his moment, but it didn't
did,
last
but then
very
he
long.
got
Yeah, it would.
injured.
Yup, I was just gonna say. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
it seemed like every time they were ready to go with him,
Yeah.
some injury would happen,
And
something would happen, and now they're
then
snake bit with him.
yeah, then you're the injured guy, you know. It's like then they're not gonna pull the trigger. And from a business standpoint, you can't really argue it because you're like, well, you know, we tried. So you can
Right.
kind of understand, but it's just like
And
I
now he kind of sits there and he just, if they're going to keep paying him, he's going to be there and he doesn't care what. Now at this point, he doesn't care what he does or who he's tagging with or what. It doesn't really matter.
but he's one of those guys that like you give him something and he'll make it work. That's what
Yeah.
makes him fun, right? So you
Yeah.
don't you kind of got to watch to see when he's gonna pop up and just listen to him because it's like, what's this dude gonna say? He knows he's got 30 seconds to say something. He's probably gonna say something that's gonna be hilarious and
Right.
awesome, like you know. And yeah, I mean, I've gotten that question a few times, and I always go with Dolph because like
You made my
he
night with that answer.
he was you know, he went from what amateur wrestling straight into OVW.
Yeah.
So he never really got out onto the independent circuit, you know.
He's
But when you
just so
watch,
good. And I've been trying
yeah,
for like 10
for sure.
years now to convince my friends how good he is.
Yeah, and it's tough because he just doesn't, you know, get much time for
And
anything,
listen,
you know?
his cash in at money. I was upset because I was at the Mania. Keith and I both were at WrestleMania 29, where
Yeah.
I thought he was going to cash in on Andrade. Or no, I'm sorry,
No.
Alberto Del Rio.
Yeah.
And he cashed
Monday
in
night.
Monday night, and I was so
Yeah.
mad
And
that
that's one of
I
my
wasn't at
favorite
that Raw.
pops. That
Right.
that pop and the Austin and Dallas pop
Yeah.
for
Yes.
Mania. Those are two different size buildings, but
Yes.
that energy when Ziggler came out walking to the ring, man, that still gives me chills.
I
Like
was part of one of the best pops ever, I think, and that was I was in the arena for an Extreme Rules where Roman Reigns had just defended the Universal Championship and Seth Rollins had been gone with his knee injury.
oh wow, you were there.
I was in the building and he
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And when he came out and attacked him, the place erupted. I mean, they went crazy
Nice.
because there was no music, there was no
Right.
nothing. We just saw him running down the ring, and this guy next. At first I didn't know who it was, and this guy next to me says Seth Rollins, and I went what? And I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it.
Nice.
And he came down, and everybody just went berserk because they had not accepted Roman Reigns for nothing, and they were booing
Right.
when he won.
And it was Philly. And
It was
yeah,
Philadelphia, and you
Philly
know how
let
they
you
are,
know.
right? And
Yeah.
they just erupt. That place sounded like 60,000. There was 20,000 there. It sounded like
Yeah.
60,000
And
people.
yeah, and then bonus, it's Seth, it's ROH country because it's
Right.
Philly.
Yep.
Oh my god, it was on. Oh my god, like, and he
He's-
just all he had to do was he gave him a pedigree and he stood there with the title and held it up.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen it, there, Ricky,
Oh,
check out the Broken Skull sessions with him and Stone Cold.
I will.
Oh my god, episode 20, I think it is. They just did it, and he talks about everything. He talks about the Shield. He talks about Ring of Honor. He talks about Becky Lynch.
Cool.
He talks about his daughter. He talks about Johnny Moxley. Like everything's on the table. He doesn't leave anything out. So
nice. I'm gonna check it out for sure. Yeah.
Oh, it's a great interview. So, but we're gonna let you go, man. And I appreciate you to the max. Every match that I've seen of yours, man, is always entertaining, and I'm glad that you've gotten out of wrestling what you've gotten out of wrestling, and I hope you continue to do so. And for as long as your body lets you, brother.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh,
No,
definitely, man,
we
definitely. And if you
definitely
got,
appreciate it.
go ahead, Keith. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely appreciate having you on. I remember I got into CM Punk and I went back and started watching some of the old Ring of Honor on there, and I remember watching you and Rocky with the Havana Pitbulls tag team, and then you were in
Nice.
the Rottweilers, and I mean,
Yeah.
you guys were one of the highlights of the show. I mean, did you know because you were in Ring of Honor pretty early in 2002, right up to about, I think, 2005, 2006, you were a regular there, somewhere
Mhm.
around there. Did
Yep.
you know early on, like, how big this was going to be, having so many friends there and stuff? Did you kind of know, like, hey, we have the nucleus of something special, or did that kind of just take you by surprise, how big it got?
You know what? That time and the Lucha Underground time for me were very similar, where every night when the show was done, you could feel like everyone was like, yeah, there's something special here, like it's extremely difficult to explain to somebody who's not a part of a locker room to understand
Right.
that type of
Mhm.
vibe, but when you're in it, you know it. So at the time, like when we first got hired on for Ring of Honor, we just looked at it like, oh, cool. Like I've heard of this place, and it seems like they got some good wrestlers there. And like our first weekend was like, wow. Like we remember just going back thinking like that was fun. Like that was, and it, you you kind of like have to get through it, and then it's a time when you kind of like start to look back and you're like, yeah, that was special, because I mean I've had a ton of fans from all over say the exact same thing, how those years were like their favorite years, like the Punk and Joe and Aries, uh Jamie Noble, Brian,
Right.
champion, when those runs as world champions were super special to them, because much like the UFC back in the day, there was less of the Ring of Honor shows, so they were more special, um the social media wasn't as much as it is now, so like maybe the stars were not as played out, I guess. I mean, I don't mean to say, but like, it's like you really had to like wait for the next Ring of Honor set of DVDs, right? To be like, I can't wait
Right.
to see this match, right? So
Right.
yeah, it was special in that sense. I'm sure UFC guys probably look at like guys like Matt Hughes and Tito Ortiz and think like, man, it was good back then, because it was harder to get hold of, I guess. But yeah,
Yep.
that like I used to tell people all the time, man, we used to go to the Rexplex in New Jersey, and man, we would be first match on Friday night, and then we'd be main eventing Saturday night. And that's how deep that locker room was. Like you
Mhm.
could take names in a hat, grab, four names out and say, this is the tag team main event of tonight. And ain't no one going to ask for a refund, because like, how do you have like Jen Nex, Roderick Strong, Jack Evans, Alex Shelley, Brian Danielson, Doug Williams, Nigel McGuinness, Chad Collier, the Pitbulls, Low Key, Homicide, Samoa Joe, CM Punk, Colt Cabana, Jay Lethal? Like, can anybody anywhere now say they have all those
They had that
guys?
roster.
Right.
No.
And like I said, you can
I mean,
just mix and match.
AEW has some of them.
Yeah, some, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like having all of us at one for probably like 2 or 3 years, was a fun time, because then you threw Aries and Strong in as a tag team, then they ran hard, and then you're like, oh, we'll take the belt off Aries, but oh, it's gonna go on Jamie Noble, and you're like, what? And then Jamie Noble drops it to Brian, and you're like, this is insane, it's like, oh, now Brian's gonna wrestle Sanjay Dutt, like what the fuck, you know what I mean? Like it's like you just pulled that out of your ass, like that's how it was, it's I mean, you can't I mean, you always want to make that, right? But you can't really, it just kind of happens. Like,
Yeah, it just falls into your lap, and it's so. And you look at it now, and looking back, yeah, it's even more special because it's like, man, how often does that happen? That
yeah,
never
and
happens.
it's like when everyone, including the fans, are just firing on all cylinders. You know, it's just a crazy like we got that in Lucha Underground. We did like the first weekend was a little rough. The second weekend of tapings got better. By the second season, we were like, we ain't going nowhere for a while, you know, like in our minds at least, you know. And everybody, it was like the more they added, the better it got, you know. And it just, you know, it just goes in waves, you know. Like maybe AEW will catch that lightning in the bottle next, you know, because they're certainly heading in that direction. And I'm hoping that they are, because
Yes,
the more that they do of that, the bigger that noise is, and maybe the other guys will say, "Oh, we can't stop, you know, messing around. These guys are kind of, you know." So, and
It can only make
this
the
is better
business
for
better.
everybody. It's just
It
better
only
for
make-
everybody.
Absolutely.
You know,
If you want to see Ricky Reyes wrestle, and you're in the New Jersey area, Pennsylvania area, he's wrestling in Rochelle Park, New Jersey, this Friday, December the 3rd for ECPW. He's also all over the place in this area, quite often, for 3WA, for CCW, and among others. So check him out. He's the man. Our guest tonight has been Ricky Reyes. I'm the Big Alboski. That's Professor Keith. We're going to get out of here. But man, thank you so much for coming on, brother. It was an absolute pleasure, and we could talk to you all night.
Yeah, me too. I talk a lot.
no, but you make our jobs easier when you do, man, and that's great. Absolutely great. So yeah, I appreciate you to the most. Much success for whatever you do from here on out, and also be safe, brother. And I can't wait to see you wrestle again.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
Absolutely. So Keith, tomorrow night we got the Wolfman at 7 p.m. live right here. Special time, special day for the Wolfman, and he's got 1,000,001 stories. Probably just as many, if not more, than Ricky Reyes. But stories wise. But yeah. So I'm the Big Alboski, Professor Keith. He has been Ricky Reyes. This is Around the Turnbuckle. We'll see you guys all next time. Peace.
Ladies and gentlemen, what you gonna do, brother? Oh yeah! Woo! What? If you smile.